Welcome to the Vybe podcast. Our mission is to provide the platform where unique voices can be heard.
We aim to build a community of support through music and other art forms.
If you enjoy the content we make, be sure to hit the follow button.
By supporting, you're helping us bring better content to you.
Much love.
Okay. Do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Taco. I am the leader of the hip-hop clan and the chieftain
Yes, sir.
of indigenous rap.
Hey.
And you've got a bunch of other stuff going on.
I got millions of shit.
What does Taco stand for? Like, what is that?
Taco is my indigenous name, but it's not spelled like taco. It's TKO, all capital letters.
Like technical knockout?
Yeah, I like technical knockout, but it's pronounced taco.
That's
and, yeah, I've got a Christian name, but I don't use it. Never have. Only in school or when I have to sign a legal document.
Yeah, I can't imagine you being like a Daniel or something.
No. I was named after my father's English name because he was sent to residential school and they called him John.
Okay.
His indigenous name, though, is, I don't reveal it, but and then my grandfather, my father's father, my paternal grandfather, his name was also John, so I'm like the sixth. But then my grandfather from my mother's side, his name is Norman, so my Christian names are John Norman. And then because my mother's side are all religious, then they used to call me John 3:36, right? And
that's funny.
He that believeth in the Son hath everlasting life, and he that believeth not the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God abideth on him.
John 3:6?
3:36.
Oh,
yeah.
3:36. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's my mantra. If I'm gonna live life, is my wrath will be upon thee.
The wrath of Taco.
Yeah, the wrath of Taco.
Not to make the subject all dark immediately, but did your father have any stories about residential schools?
Oh yeah, my father.
Full send, eh? Yeah.
Hey, might as well.
Spreading awareness.
Majority of my music is derived from the stories that my father told me about being forced into residential school and how my mother was forced to come to Winnipeg when she was a teenager, and the things that happened to them, like they were sexually assaulted, molested, beaten, and not beaten just by priests and nuns, but by other indigenous people that were staying, the kids that were staying with them or living with them. A priest raped my father, and what the priest used to do was he would offer alcohol and cigarettes to the boys when he called them to the office. And so, he'd maybe get one or two of them in there, get them drunk, and then he would assault them. And then, and he would offer cigarettes because tobacco has always been a cultural practice for indigenous people. He had tobacco and he could roll the cigarettes, and then he'd hand them out to the boys. None of the girls were ever offered any of this stuff to my knowledge, but my father said it was always the boys that the priests were always targeting.
Not to make light of the situation, but that's so because like there's a running joke, right? Like priests like little boys,
That's really odd. I wonder if there's some like what is going on in their mind that they feel like if they go for girls that's a sin, but it's all right to go for boys. Is there some like religious battle in their brain? Because
I'm sure
it's all just pure evil.
I'm sure there were some priests that went for the girls, but you have to realize that majority of the priests go through seminary and they grow up with boys, right?
Right.
And they're in the seminary and they're all men, and now women of course are allowed in and shit like that, right? But my dad went to school with Ovid McCready and Phil Fontaine. These were like the Manitoba Grand Chiefs, and he went to school with like all of these prominent indigenous people that are prominent now, but they were all trained to be government type peoples, so they were trained to be white, right? And so when I was growing up, I had to, because of their government service, my dad's government service, we got transferred on and off reserves constantly because he worked for Indigenous Affairs.
Okay.
Well, they called it Indian Affairs back then, INAC. Then it went to DIAND, Department of Indian and Northern Affairs Department, right? And then I eventually started working for them as a bodyguard and as a transcriptionist and things like that. But I was only there while I was going to university. So my mother, when she was moved off the reserve, my mother's always been stylish and very classy lady, and so she was trained to look white and act white. Her hair was like an auburn color, so she didn't look indigenous. Plus, she wore all this makeup and always dressed in the highest fashions, right? And my father always was taught to wear suits and have short hair because they cut his hair off when he went to boarding school and residential school. So he wasn't allowed to have long hair. And they always had to wear white shirt and tie and black pants, right? So my dad, that's how he dressed. And so my parents looked more Italian than they looked indigenous. But then, of course, I come into the world, and I fought against all that, and I had long hair and braided my hair, and I go to powwows, and I picked up all this stuff. But I'll tell you, my father, because he was abused from both the religious and the religious peoples, priests, nuns, government agents and whatever have you. Even the RCMP abused the kids sometimes, But he also had to deal with the indigenous kids and those people. And then when he go to white communities, he had to deal with the white. Well, that's the same thing I had to go through. Every time I go to a reserve, I didn't speak the language, and I sounded more white than I sounded anything, right? Mm. If you didn't see me, but you heard my voice, you'd either swear that I was white or some other, like I don't sound indigenous, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of the problems that I had. Said so did my parents, right? We didn't sound indigenous, but my mother speaks Soto. My father could understand Cree, but he couldn't speak it. My mother can understand the Cree, but she doesn't speak it either. That's probably why I'm learning all of the languages that I'm learning from all over the world, right? Because I interact with all these cultures. But I had to deal with not being accepted by indigenous and non-indigenous people no matter where I went. And because I dressed like, my mom always made sure we always dressed in nice pants, nice shoes, nice shirts. Our hair was always combed nice, so, And even though I wanted long hair, I still had to have a part on the side, like a little boy, parted hair and tied in the back. But my mom didn't want to braid my hair, so I had to learn how to braid my own hair when I was a little kid, and I got pretty good at it, right? So now I wear double braids most of the time, but usually when I go out, I just have a single braid, which is quick. But having to deal with all that kind of stuff, my father hated the church. He hated Catholics especially. And of course, it rubbed onto me. My mother's family is all religious, and we have our own family church. So I have to accept the religion in my family, but at the same time, I hate religion because of what it's done, right? And, whenever I see priests, especially Catholic, first thing that pops in my head is take those teepees down and get the out. That's all I see, that cross sign. Every time they come somewhere, every indigenous culture is they give this sign, and next thing you know, all the people are dead or they're wiped out, right? So that's what I equated all that to. And now I don't even like any religion, yet I'm doing a gospel album under one of my other personas. So it's
right. So there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
I feel like the views that you and your family hold are against the Catholics are how do I say this? Are well justified, but also the fact that you're able to reconcile that pain within yourself and still work on gospel music and understand that it's not the subject itself that is the issue, but it's the people that pretend to be something that they're not.
Well, I think it's I don't like organized religion.
Yeah.
I don't like churches, and I don't like people forcing you to follow this or that, because everybody that reads the Bible interprets it their own way.
Yeah.
Right? The majority of those people are white men that want rule over their animals, their wives, their children, their land, their property. Yeah. So however they read the Bible, that's how they interpret it.
Yeah.
And so every community has a different interpretation. Some communities are like, what was that? Footloose, with Kevin Bacon. No dancing, no music, no, no fornication.
Yeah.
Whereas some communities are like outsiders. There's a playground and a Ferris wheel, and all the kids can have fun riding around. And
yeah, man, just like you said, there's a lot to unpack there, but I feel a lot of what you say is very like representative of like it's a shared experience of people who go through colonialism. We have the feeling, as an African myself, we went through colonialism. I mean, we were colonized by the British, from Nigeria, and not just the British. We're colonized by the Arabs, the British, the French, the Portuguese. I mean, they all just took turns,
Yeah.
right? But that's a shared experience. A lot of, especially in my generation, I know a lot of kids, push back against religion. A lot of kids reject religion, due to all of the negativity they see that's come from religion, not just throughout history, but also in their own personal experiences and their own personal lives.
Mother is God.
You know what I mean?
Right?
And so it's like, with that said, you're completely right in the sense that everyone has their own interpretation of the Bible. You know what I mean? And based on your experiences, based on your own like biases, based on your own perception, you know what I mean? You could interpret the Bible in whatever way you seem fit. And I find humanity does this a lot. We make monsters out of beautiful things. You know what I mean? Like religion all religion was created on the foundation of spirituality, right? And so it's like I personally believe spirituality is a very beautiful thing. But
I agree.
I'm against organized religion, like you say. Like, man, that's something I had to like navigate through my own biases and through my own experience to come to that conclusion. Because for a long time, I was going through that phase where it's like, fuck religion, I hate religion, I'm not doing this shit, you know what I mean? Right? But then I had to learn and like unlearn a lot of things to be able to make that separation, you know what I mean? That just because someone calls themselves a Christian doesn't actually make them a Christian.
Yeah.
My mother's siblings call themselves Christian, and nothing that I've seen, could relate.
And to go further on that, actually, there's a lot of what's the word? A lot of manipulation of like public perception, in the sense that they want you to believe Christians are just like good, loving, accepting people, and like Muslims are a bunch of like extremists, you know what I mean? And like Buddhists, like, they believe in like more than one God. How is that possible? You know what I mean? Like they try and shape like people's perception and try to make Christianity look like this holy grail thing, you know what I mean? Where it's like, in reality, every belief system has extremism, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you could be an extreme on anything, you know what
It's
I
the
mean?
person that controls the book, right? I've read the Talmud. I've read the Quran. I've read, the
Bible.
Indian, Bible and Indian books,
Have you read the Torah?
I've read the Torah, right? I've read all these things because I need to know what I'm talking about when I'm writing my rhymes or my stories or my books, right?
Right.
I don't want to talk about
Yeah.
any of these religions.
Yeah.
I'm not against religion. I'm not against faith. I hate organized religion, and I hate people who use the book to thwart others.
Yes.
There's values and teachings. The takeaway is that there's values and teachings in all religion. The issue was never religion.
Facts.
The issue was people that take the religion and use it to justify their own sins.
Yes.
While reprimanding others for their sins, saying,
Yes.
I can sin because I'm a religious person,
Right.
but you can't.
Right.
That makes no fucking
You know,
See, that's why I interrupted you when I said mother is God. Because mother is God, right? Like your mother is your key point. She brings you into the world.
Yeah,
she gives
I
you
see what
her
you mean.
life energies,
I see what you mean.
to you can survive on your own.
Yeah.
And so like, in any culture, mother is God. But that's why I always say, I can't stand guys that abuse women and children, right? When you beat your woman, when you hit your woman, or any woman, if you love your mother, then you respect women. You do
Amen to
not harm your mother. You do not harm your sisters. You do not
Facts.
harm your children.
Pussy-o.
You know, yeah, you're a goof, you're a wimp,
Yes.
you're, you know.
Yes.
So, mother is God. So, I believe in my mother. And my mother, because, again, my mother's religious, my father's wasn't, right? My father's not. But I always tell my mother, I may not get into heaven, but I'll stand at the gates. And I'll stand there with my knife and a feather, and I'll make sure nothing comes in to harm you.
Man, as noble as that sound, I don't think any mom wants to hear that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every mom will be like, "No, I want you in heaven." With
Yeah,
me,"
you
know
want,
what I mean?
yeah. But it's, I totally, I don't want to be hypocritical, you know, and then all of a sudden the day comes and,
Right.
and, you know, I end up at the pearly gates, if there is pearly gates, right?
Right.
I don't mind having to get in or not get in, but I'll stand at the gates to make sure that my mother and all my ancestors before me that I love,
Right.
they're protected.
Right.
So I'll stand there for eternity if I have to atone for any sins I may have.
Right.
But I don't believe in sins because I'm not
I hear what you mean.
religious, right?
Would you say that perspective is like it's the warrior in you?
Yeah, it's the warrior in me for sure. Yeah, even my lyrics in all my songs, it has to be with the fact that we're not. The Russian mafia has this thing where they tattoo themselves and they tattoo stars on their knees.
Okay.
And that means they never kneel for any man. They don't bow down or, you know.
Yeah.
Same thing with native culture. They have the leather that's tied around their knees.
Right.
And that bloody hurts, man. But it holds your knife. It holds your, you know. If you kneel, you know, to your captors or to those who are trying to harm you, you're giving in.
Right.
You know, kill me before you.
Yes.
You know, it's not going to get me on my knees.
Okay. Before we get even further, could you describe to our viewers, for those who aren't aware of indigenous culture, what is a warrior? What does that mean?
I think a warrior is somebody that bleeds for his people, that sacrifices for his family first. You can't help your people if you can't help your family. And if you can't help your family, that means, you know, like you're sacrificing them by your drugs, by your alcohol, by your actions. If you want to be a gangbanger, you're just bringing more shame to your family. The idea is to protect, right? Your circle starts here with your family. You got to protect them, feed them, make sure that they prosper or they're in a secure space in life. Then the next goes to your relatives. Then the next circle goes to your neighborhood or your community. Then the next circle goes to your people, you know, your race, your culture.
Right.
Like there's a circle. That's what the circle of life
That's
is,
beautiful.
right? And you got to start from the beginning. And a warrior in the beginning always focuses on his family. His or her family, I should say.
Right.
I know some pretty strong Native women, right?
Yeah.
That have grown up without any family or parents or, you know.
Right.
Or even single mothers. These are warriors, right? So
Yeah.
a warrior is somebody that takes care of their own first. It's good to go out there and say you're going to help your community. You're going to do what you can to feed the hungry or give housing or shelter or whatever.
Right.
But if you can't do that for yourself first and then work on your external family and then your community.
It sounds, man, first of all, that's a very beautiful motto. You know what I mean? Thinking about it that way, it's like as a warrior, if you're the center, you know what I mean, your first circle is your family, and then it's the extended family, and then it's the community. You know, that I think that's a very beautiful model of life. But
Friends fall into the circle of family, though.
okay. Okay.
And it's a metaphor for the responsibilities of being a man.
Yeah.
I was not
Well, a
just
person.
not just a man.
Yeah, I guess so.
Responsibilities of
Right.
being a productive person in society.
Okay, so then with that said, it sounds like a lot of what being a warrior is like in Western culture could be attributed to like being a knight, for example. You know what I mean? The same ideas of like nobility, gallantry, idea of like protect and serve. So that sounds about right.
Yeah, that's actually one of the characters that, I shouldn't say characters, but a character. One of my personas from my other genres of music is actually the title of that person is a shield bearer. It's not
Like
the
a
knight.
shield maiden.
It's like a shield maiden, warrior.
But you don't want to call yourself a woman? Yeah.
I don't mind being a woman, you know. I mean,
Oh shit.
as long as I'm on top doing the pushing, it doesn't matter, right? I'm still the man, no matter what, right? But no, like, see, one of my personas is called Esquire.
Right.
And Esquire in Scottish terms is a shield bearer for the knight.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
But esquire is also somebody of important note in
Yes.
in legal terminology, right?
Okay.
So one of my characters is embodying that. I don't want to be a knight, and I'm not trying to say that I'm the top dog.
Right.
I don't mind being a shield bearer because I'm a warrior, right? And I'll hold that shield for the knight or for whoever is going to speak.
Okay.
I don't mind, My mother is the one that speaks. I'm the shield bearer for my mother.
Yeah,
right?
man. I know I'm asking a lot of questions, and I don't mean to.
No, that's cool, man.
But when you're touching on that, that sounds a lot of your ideologies and belief system. I can hear so much of indigenous beliefs and structure in that. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of indigenous cultures are matriarchal, right? Which means like, for those who are matriarchal, it's just the opposite of patriarchal. It means the women are in charge, essentially, right? So from what it sounds like your idea of like I'll be the shield bearer for whoever is going to speak, it sounds like, right, like I don't have to be the one at the top. I don't have to be the boss. You know what I mean? Like I'm okay being the number two. You know what I mean? Like it sounds at some people might call that being like a beta man as opposed to being like an alpha man. And that's something we see a lot in modern society. Like on social media, you see a lot like, I don't want a beta man. I don't want a man who's passive. I don't want you know what I mean? Stuff like that, right? And it's, I guess I'm trying to get your opinion on this, your perspective. Like, we moved from a society where obviously this is different from indigenous culture because you got, most indigenous cultures are matriarchal, right? But for the rest of the world, we live in a patriarchal society, right? And where masculinity has historically been described through a very toxic lens, you know what I mean, right? But now we're like, with the feminist movements, you know what I mean, and the suffrage movements and fighting to get the rights to vote and all of this apartheid, all of that. There's been a lot of social justice movements since the 1960s up until now that has slowly changed the narrative of what it means to be a man. However, I find that we went from men are very like patriarchal and toxic, we have to be the ones at the top, alpha males. And now I find we live in a society where a lot of males are very passive, are very timid, a lot of males lack discipline, lack motivation, as a person who's lived through this, is that something you could is that something you've noticed as well? Like, what are your thoughts on how society has progressed?
Native culture, women have always been our society has been
matriarchal.
Yeah, matriarchal. It's women based, right? You can't have a community or a family without a woman.
Yes. Sir.
Who gives birth? Who brings brings the life to the world?
Right.
Right. So the women were always respected. But as soon as the conquerors decide the fate, right? So as soon as colonialism came about, as soon as people started coming into indigenous country, Turtle Island, they brought with them their poisons, like alcohol and drugs, sugar, right,
yes.
Right, and so. They bring that into the culture and introduce it to the culture as gifts or trading for our goods or our knowledge. They did the same thing in
Africa, man.
Right? They did the same thing in Africa.
Yeah.
Now, just like Africa, our chiefs caved into some of these things and traded our people, gave away our people. Like natives were slaves too, but we weren't as strong as the African or the Caribbean.
Right.
Well, which Caribbean was African, right?
Yeah.
But we weren't physically as big and strong as the color, so we've been relegated to be the dogs, the house dogs, the cleaners. We didn't do all of the manual stuff that the blacks were strong enough to do, right? We didn't have that physique. It wasn't in the native. I mean, they're big native guys. There's big people everywhere, right?
Right.
But we were always the fast-fleeted, quick and we fearless. Never back down from anything. But
Crafty and good with your hands. Too.
Crafty and good with their hands.
Yeah.
Not balls.
Warriors.
Yeah, not balls.
Why do you guys keep doing that? I'm uncomfortable.
But yeah, you know, once all of the poisons were introduced to the indigenous communities, right? Then you start seeing indigenous men acting like the non-indigenous, beating their women, hurting their children, starting to collect to make it theirs when indigenous didn't collect or keep, they shared or they gave. Now they're trying to hold all this in, and that's why you see all these native guys beating their women and hurting the kids and going to jail because they want to be the alpha. They want to be the tough guy, you know? And you don't need to do that, you know? If you're having that much of a problem in your life that you have to beat on the people that you should be loving, and that will give that love back to you, and you're training your kids to be stupid like that too, then, you know, you've totally abused what your cultural background and all of their teachings should have made you. You're accepting the poisons. You're accepting those teachings that are negative, and you're following a way that's not our way. And you know, our women should be respected, and a lot of our women know the medicines that we've lost. They know a lot of stuff that people are just not, our own people are not catching all of the knowledge and the gifts that women have, you know? And we should be putting that back into place. Women are the ones that decided when, you know, when their man would be able to go to war or, you know, do whatever in the community.
Yeah, from my readings, you know, what I've seen is that there was often a spokesperson who was a man, but he always listened to the Queen Mother.
Yeah.
And I mean, so the Queen Mother would tell you, you know, okay, go negotiate, you know what I mean? Or go hunt, you know what I mean? Go to war, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's always the mothers, right? And I should say the mothers decided when the men would go to war, because the mothers had to rear the kids, raise the kids, had to take care of the food, how it was prepared, and, you know, even gardening, farming, even sex. Yeah, you can't have anything without the woman's decision, right?
Yeah, that's such a valid point, because, you know, Vets Day actually started because mothers came together to advocate the end of war, because they saw that every soldier was the child of someone. So it doesn't matter what side you're on, good, bad, you know, what country. I mean, it's like, no, you're someone's child and someone is going to miss you.
Yeah.
So that was actually the creation of what is now known as Vets Day. You know what I mean? I find that very beautiful, and it's like, for me, I'm passionate about this a bit. I feel like it's gonna be you're gonna be doing a lot of watching, because, you know, he's been through colonialism. I've lived through colonialism, and this is something I'm very passionate about. You know, and I find, you know, Africans, Black Americans, Indigenous people, we have a lot of shared and similar experiences, because we have a lot of shared and similar histories, and
well, you're indigenous, but you're indigenous
So
in
Africa.
another continent, right?
Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Chinese are indigenous, but they're indigenous to that continent.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But like, with that said, you know, you said, you know, colonization poisoned your culture in terms of, like, literally the poisons they brought, you know, from alcohol to sugar to, like, chicken pox, you know what I mean, smallpox, all of that, right? But what would you say are the reasons why, like you said, why certain indigenous men feel the need to be the alpha? Because, like, for me, when I'm doing my research, when I'm reading, when I talk to people, you know what I mean, indigenous people, you know, what I find is, you know, very similar to Black culture. There's a lot of internalized racism. There's a lot of internalized self-hate. There's a lot of internalized colonial thinking. You know what I mean? Like, for example, in Africa, right? You know how you said you guys couldn't let your mom wouldn't let you wear your hair long. Same thing in Africa, man. Like, most African parents would not let their kids braid their hair, would not let their kids have dreads. You know what I mean? Would not have let the kids have anything that's not a low cut. You know what I mean? That's not proper. You know what I mean, right? You know, most Africans, you know, want their kids wearing suits and ties. You know what I mean? Want their kids looking just Sunday's best, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Right? And that's such ingrained colonial thinking, you know what I mean? Telling us that our natural hair isn't good enough, you know what I mean? Telling us that our natural cultural clothing is inferior, telling us that our food and our way of life is inferior.
Well, we've got the perfect person that could easily describe what some of the non-indigenous thought or how they looked. Because you grew up, well, you were born in Hudson, right? So
Well, the thing is, though, I grew up in the countryside, so I wasn't exposed to a lot of different people from a young age, right? Mostly, I was exposed a lot to Indigenous people, yes, because there was a lot of Indigenous folks at my school, and there was Indigenous folks in my home. So, like brothers, sisters. But I never really looked at it from a cultural perspective because my family didn't educate me on Indigenous struggles. I just looked at them as family. So I had a very simple, and there's pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
You know, I've taken strides in more recent years to educate myself more on ethnic and cultural struggles, but in that time I just viewed them as family. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode.
Make sure to turn on the notifications so you don't miss part 2 coming out next week.